outside. My job is to facilitate that process in as orderly a manner as possible. Our ability to amend is limited. Warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. We cannot change or eliminate the subject matter of an article. No new purposes can be introduced that were not identified to voters in the posted warrant. We can change dollar amounts in money articles, and amendments must be in writing, and we will deal with only one amendment at a time. All questions should be directed to the moderator. I will then choose who responds to the question. No one should speak without first being recognized by the moderator. Once you are recognized, please step forward to speak into the microphone, introduce yourself and where you live. Please focus your remarks on the content of the article or amendment and refrain from personal comment. All speakers must be courteous and we must speak to the issues, not the individual raising them. And I will not allow any personal attacks or inappropriate language. All voting will be conducted by hand or standing unless 5 voters present at the meeting request in writing prior to the vote that a vote should be taken by secret written ballot. I, as the moderator, will only vote to break or make a tie. If the vote on the motion ties, it loses. One bit of housekeeping before we get started. In the event of an emergency, the exits are as noted on either side of the auditorium. So the first order of business is I will entertain a motion to permit the following individuals who work for the SAU or for Winnacunnet High School but do not live in Northampton, Hampton Falls, or Seabrook to speak. And those individuals are Meredith Nato, Bill McGowan, and Matt Ferrara. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
That's moved by Leslie LaFont. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, I think it was Desiree?
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone, all in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's start with the warrant articles. The first is the operating budget. And I'll read the article to you. The average cost per pupil for the preceding year as calculated in accordance with RSA 189:75, Roman numeral 1, parentheses A, is $28,650.51. Winnacunnet English Language Arts proficiency is 64%. The state proficiency average is 55%. Winnacunnet math proficiency is 33%. The state average is 42%. Winnacunnet science proficiency is 41%, and the state average is 38%. Shall the school district raise and appropriate an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $32,803,073. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $32,469,395, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the school board or by law. The governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numerals 10 and 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. A majority vote is required. Note, warrant Article 1, the operating budget, does not include appropriations in any other warrant articles. This article is recommended by the school board 5-0, and recommended by the budget committee 4-0. Is there a motion to open discussion?
I move to open the article for discussion.
Thank you. And that was Tricia O'Keefe. And is there a second?
I'll second that.
From Nicole Chico. Does anyone wish to, I believe that we have a presentation from Matt Ferrara, who's going to provide an overview of the budget, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, and good evening. I'd like to begin by thanking the school board as well as the budget committee. They really put some thoughtful and collaborative work into this budget proposal, and they were collaborative throughout the process. I also want to recognize Principal Bill McGowan, along with his team. They really put tremendous effort into building this plan. I'll note that this budget was developed using a true zero-based approach. So that meant that we started from the ground up. We carefully reviewed every account, all the staffing levels. We conduct staffing analysis in every department. We looked at every resource necessary to ensure that we were aligned with our mission, and ultimately in order to meet the needs of our students. So the FY27 budget is built around supporting a learning environment, one where students are challenged to think critically, solve problems, and really make thoughtful, responsible decisions. Through a balance of independent work and collaboration, our goal is to ensure every student is prepared not only for academic success, but also to be engaged and contributing member of the broader community. When looking at school budgets, a budget really reflects more than just numbers on page. It truly represents a vision, priorities, and our shared commitment to provide the best possible educational experience for our students. And we believe that this budget did accomplish that goal. So the FY27 proposed budget is designed to strategically invest in its people, programs, and supports that allow students to thrive academically and beyond the classroom. This budget is aligned both with the SAU 21 Portrait of a Learner Strategic Plan, as well as the Winnacunnet School Improvement Plan. And that really ensures consistency with our shared values and expectations. These investments are guided through 5 core focus areas. That includes academics, student mindsets, essential life skills, physical and mental well-being, and strong community engagement. So when looking at developing a budget, enrollment is a key metric. We do anticipate maintaining steady enrollment with a projection of 977 students for the 26-27 school year. And that closely mirrors our recent enrollment trends. After a modest decline over the past few years, enrollment has stabilized, and that allows us to plan staffing, class sizes, and allocate resources with greater confidence and to maintain consistency in our academic programming. So these annual projections really play a critical role when we're conducting both our short-term and our long-term planning cycle. They inform our budget development, facilities plannings, and our future resource allocation across this year. Embedded in the operating budget is a cost of living adjustment. That includes both of our unions. We have our teachers union and our paraprofessional union, C and CESPO. Additionally, and I'll note that those cost of living adjustments are dictated by the collective bargaining agreements. Additionally, each year we do benchmark our non-union staff to the Consumer Price Index, CPIU, for our specific geographic region. That non-union staff includes our administrators, our administrative assistants, facilities team, our food service staff, and our technology team. So from July of 2024 to July of 2025, that index rose 3.2%. That is the rate that we are recommending SAU-wide for FY27. This consistent data-based approach helps to ensure fairness, inflation adjustment, and competitive compensation across all of our districts. So the proposed FY27 operating budget for the Winnacunnet Cooperative School District is $32,803,073. That represents a 1.76% increase over the current FY26 budget. This modest year-over-year growth reflects a combination of contractual obligations, inflationary pressures, and targeted program investments, while also maintaining overall fiscal restraint. When compared to the default budget, the proposed budget is $333,679 higher than the default amount of $32,469,393. And that difference reflects the cost of funding ongoing operational needs beyond the statutory default calculation. We'll also note that that small differential between the proposed budget and the default budget, while in the face of some very strong inflationary pressures, that really reflects a continued commitment to fiscal responsibility. And that's all while still meeting the needs of our students and our staff. So there are several key factors that contributed to the reductions in the FY27 operating budget. We do conduct staffing analysis of our departments to determine what that required staffing level is, and that adjusts appropriately. So for FY27, we are including the planned reduction of 3 teacher positions through retirement. We are forecasting decreases in out-of-district special education tuition, as well as specialized transportation. And that's driven by changing needs, or rather changing student needs per their IEP requirements. We also recognize savings through a reduction in ESOL contracted services. That's English as a second language services, and that again is based on student need.
Okay.
Finally, we recognize savings through the department level prioritization of all of our discretionary accounts. This is really where we carefully reviewed every request and adjusted to reduce those overall costs, while still being sure that we were preserving core programming. So several primary factors are contributing to the increases in the operating budget as well. These include the contractual salary obligations for our C and CESPA unions, as well as our non-union staff. Our health insurance costs are rising due to employee plan election changes. Additionally, we are returning our health insurance account to prior funding levels. We've been utilizing our health insurance expendable trust to hedge on those costs and under budget that account. And this fiscal year, we are reverting back to normal spending levels. We continue to experience inflationary pressure across operational areas. That includes instructional materials, software, utilities, facilities operations, contracted services, any service that requires labor. We're seeing some significant increases as wages increase. Our departments such as food service and facilities were particularly hit hard when it came to inflation. And then finally, our student activities account does reflect an investment in a new robotics program, and that includes supplies, registrations, and competition fees for that new program.
Okay.
So when we discuss the budget, it's also important to remember that revenue is just as important as expenditures. Although I will note it's oftentimes less visible. It's not typically in the budget conversation. We really have far less direct control over it. We get the revenue that we get through federal and state grants, for some fees, etc. But I do want to briefly update you on a recent change in New Hampshire law, and that expanded the eligibility for education freedom accounts, or EFAs. Under this program, state adequacy aid is provided directly to families who choose alternative educational options outside of public schools. Prior to this law change, an estimated 15 Winnacunnet member community students were eligible for EFAs, and that represented approximately $64,000 in state adequacy funding. Following the eligibility expansion, that number increased to 48 students, with the associated funding rising to just over $208,000. So in practical terms, that represents a real meaningful increase, both in eligibility for those families, as well as state aid that was redirected outside of public schools in the state of New Hampshire. So now I'll move into the budget detail section, and that's where we'll take a closer look at each departmental budget, and I'll highlight any increase or decrease, what's included in each area, as well as the factors that are driving changes from last year. This should provide a clearer picture of how resources are being allocated, and really how those resources are utilized to meet student needs. So the general education budget totals $8,043,664. That's a decrease of $200,015 or 2.46%. This reduction reflects the elimination of 3 teaching positions for retirements that won't be filled, along with decreases in ESOL contracting, and we've also reduced equipment leases. Those reductions are partially offset by contractual cost of living adjustments, as well as higher costs for supplies and instructional materials. The special education budget totals $4,867,586. That's an increase of $113,869 or 2.4%. This increase is driven by higher costs for special education professional services, legal expenses, evaluations, and salaries. I will note that a staffing realignment is also included in this budget. Although there isn't a reduction in cost, we did shift a special education teaching position to a BCBA position. That's a board certified behavior analyst. And that's to better align services with student needs. And these increases were partially offset by a reduction in out-of-district placement tuition. So when I talk about staffing changes and staffing analysis by departments, we really take a hard look at every department. In special education in particular, we take a look at every IEP for all the students that we have either in school or that are coming up from our member school, 8th grade member school districts. And we calculate the service levels that every student requires, the hours of service, and then we extrapolate that to the staffing levels that are required. So that could result in an increase in staffing, that could result in a decrease, particularly in special education where student need can be more volatile. But what it does is it provides an estimate for the staffing levels that we truly need, and it eliminates any wasted resources, any wasted hours and salaries. So taken together, these changes do reflect a rebalancing of resources to align with student service requirements. The general education staffing reductions reflect current student need, and the increase in special education funding ensures that we as a district continue to meet our IEP mandates, and it also provides appropriate supports, maintains the educational programming, and can meet the needs for all students. The vocational programs budget totals $442,535. That's an increase of $34,011 or 8.33%. This increase reflects higher student enrollment and annual tuition set by the Seacoast School of Technology Governing Board. The SST is our vocational school that we do transport our students to here on the Seacoast. The student activities budget totals $1,054,246. That's an increase of $53,294 or 5.32%. That increase is driven primarily by investment in the aforementioned new robotics program, along with some incremental increases for our officials, rentals, athletic equipment repair and maintenance, uniforms, supplies, equipment, staffing, and user fees. From a student perspective, these investments truly expand access to career and technical educational opportunities and enhance extracurricular programming, supporting student engagement, skill development, and enrichment beyond the classroom. The summer program budget totals $100,000. That's an increase of $1,750 or 4.99%. And that increase reflects higher supply costs, again, driven by inflation. You'll note that I've mentioned inflation a few times in this presentation, and that will continue because that does have a disproportionate effect on the budget. I know you all see it at home with your cost of living, with your groceries and heating costs and just cost of living. And schools are not immune. And in often cases, our costs are rising at a higher rate than the inflation that we as community members are facing. When you look at our special education costs, our health insurance costs, and some of those school-specific inflationary areas. But these adjustments, the evening school budget totals $165,691. That's an increase of $6,040, or 3.78%. And that increase is attributable to contractual salary cost of living and stack increases. So these adjustments support continued access to summer learning opportunities as well as evening coursework. And that helps students recover credits, extend learning, and ultimately they stay on track academically. So the guidance budget totaled $1,281,951. That's an increase of just a few $1,398 to 4.26%. And this increase reflects COLA adjustments, increased participation in EP advanced placement exams, and also the cost of administering the New Hampshire Department of Education Youth Risk Behavior and Tobacco Use Survey. Just rolls off the tongue. That occurs every other year. The health services budget totals $204,799. That's an increase of $5,517, or 3.04%. That increase is driven by salary cost of living adjustments, higher supply costs, including AED batteries, pads, and replacement electrolyte sets. And these investments really support academic planning, college and career readiness, student wellness, and the health and safety services that truly are essential to maintaining a supportive learning environment. The speech services budget is $80,320, reflecting an increase of $4,790, or 6.34%. This change is driven by contractual salary increases, and those are for our speech and language service providers. The other support services account remains $1. That has no change from the prior year. This line is maintained as a placeholder in order to allow us for flexibility should the future need arise. But from a student perspective, maintaining adequate funding for speech services ensures continued access to essential communication supports while also preserving flexibility in our support accounts with the $1 that allows the district to respond to emerging student needs should they develop. The improvement of construction budget totals $407,766, an increase of $15,765, or 4.02%. That increase reflects summer curriculum work, as well as salary increases. Those are partially offset by a reduction in anticipated workshops, as well as some. The educational media budget totals $223,157. That reflects a slight decrease of $132, at 0.06%. And this change is primarily due to educational information access fee subscriptions, which offset the retained salary adjustments. But these adjustments support ongoing curriculum development and instructional quality while maintaining access to essential educational resources in a cost-conscious manner. The information and technology budget totals $830,247. That's an increase of $27,225, or 3.89%. And this aligns with the school board approved technology plan and reflects higher costs for software, salaries, and information access fees. Those increases are offset partially by anticipated reductions in repair and maintenance, as well as equipment replacement. The support services budget totals $70,000. That does remain leveled from the prior year. This account reflects the truancy officer salary, as well as the district's cost share for the school resource officer. I'll note that the SRO is a Hampton Police Department employee, and we pay the police department for services during the school year. Continued investment in technology supports instructional delivery. It supports digital access and operational reliability. Similarly, our stable support services, funding maintains essential safety and attendance supports across our school community. So the Board of Education budget totals $89,264. That's an increase of $5,977, or 7.18%. This increase is primarily driven by higher legal costs, along with modest increases in salaries, audit services for our third-party independent audit, postage costs, and other related accounts. Those are partially offset by anticipated reductions in our annual meeting and advertising expenses. The SAU services budget totals $1,130,660. That's an increase of $82,500.3, or 7.87%. This increase reflects the district's share of the SAU central office budget. The SAU 21 model provides shared personnel, operational efficiencies, and economies of scale that help control costs while maintaining high-quality services and always preserving individual district identity as well as autonomy. These investments support effective governance, legal compliance, and centralized services, and that allows schools to focus resources and attention on teaching, learning, and student support. The school administration budget totaled $1,006,813. That's an increase of $30,030, or 3.07%. This increase reflects contractual salary adjustments, postage, and those are offset by anticipated reductions in graduation-related expenses as well as using fees. The buildings budget totals $2,024,062, an increase of $70,734, or 3.62%. This increase aligns with the district's 5-year facilities plan and is primarily driven by inflation across facilities-related costs, and that includes insurance, consulting services, supplies, repairs and maintenance, electrical work, salaries, furniture. I will note that these increases are partially offset by anticipated savings in water, supplies, heating fuels, and training expenses. And when I talk about heating fuels, the SAU does contract out SAU-wide, again, in order to leverage that economies of scale across our natural gas, our electricity, propane, oil accounts, and we do recognize significant savings by doing that SAU-wide. These investments support safe, well-maintained school facilities and effective day-to-day operations and provide stable and supportive learning environment. The grounds budget totals $277,000. That's an increase of $13,500, 5.2%. This increase reflects a planned investment to replace the district's primary ride-on lawnmower, which has reduced the useful life. The vehicles budget totals $61,400 and reflects a slight decrease in $901, or 1.45%. This account remains largely level funded, with continued lease payments and overall vehicle-related expenses expected to remain fairly stable. And from a student perspective, these investments support the upkeep and the safety of outdoor spaces and ensure reliable maintenance operations across our campus. The transportation budget totaled $1,969,917. That's a decrease of $43,994, 2.18%. This reduction is primarily driven by the lower special education transportation costs. And that reflects a decrease in the need for out-of-district placement transportation. The remainder of this budget reflects the third year of the district's 5-year contract with students. And First Student does provide our general education daily rates, our athletic transportation, field trips, and other transportation services. And when I say other transportation services, that could be a band trip, that could be the math team or chess club, or it could be for our foster students under the evento, WA. Our debt service budget remains zero, as there are currently no outstanding bond payments. These adjustments maintain reliable transportation services while aligning costs with current student needs and transportation demand. The employee benefits budget totals $7,830,028. That's an increase of $299,942, or 3.98%. This increase is primarily driven by changes in staff health insurance plan elections, as well as the return to normal participation levels following the prior year under budgeting. Additionally, benefit costs reflects variable increases tied to those salary adjustments. From a student perspective, maintaining competitive and stable employee benefits supports staff recruitment and retention, which in turn helps ensure continuity, quality instruction, and consistent student support services across the district. The interfund transfer budget remains level at $3,000, and that reflects transfer from the general fund to the food service fund to address any food service operating needs. So all the accounts that were just went through were consisted of the general fund. The food service fund is separate because that has offsetting revenues through the National School Lunch Program, USDA reimbursement for 302 students, as well as revenue from students and staff purchasing lunch. So should there be a deficit, the general fund needs to offset that deficit. So that's what the interfund transfer is. The food service budget totals $656,646, a decrease of $5,980 or 0.9%. This reduction is primarily due to staffing adjustments, partially offset by higher food and supply costs that were argued by inflation. These adjustments support the continued operation of the school meal program while balancing staffing levels and rising food costs in order to maintain reliable access to nutritious meals. We oftentimes don't think about our students and their meals. However, there is a certain population of our students that are food insecure, and it's very important that we can provide a nutritious meal both for breakfast and lunch. The default budget for FY27 is $32,014,610,394. That is $332,679 less than the proposed operating budget, $32,203,073. And the default budget is calculated using a statutory formula, and that starts with the prior year's approved operating budget, and then it's adjusted for any contractual obligations, any mandated costs, debt service, and then any other recurring costs. It removes any one-time expenditures. It also removes any salaries and benefits of any positions that are eliminated in the coding budget. So that concludes the detailed review of the budget by category. Across these accounts, most year-over-year changes are driven by staffing adjustments tied to student service needs, contractual salary and benefit obligations, and targeted operational cost changes. Wherever possible, reductions and reallocations have been made to keep the overall budget stable while maintaining instructional quality and required student supports. Overall, the budget reflects a needs-based approach. We align staffing, programs, and operational resources with student needs, board policy, and long-term planning priorities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt.